This Coast to Coast Entertainment Network program is brought to you by Beside Me Bracelets. Our bracelets are handmade for any occasion. Use the promo code Coast to Coast for 15% off. Visit their website at besideme.com. Suzanne's Paparazzi Jewelry. With 24-hour shopping available, use the code 160920 and show her some love, like she showed us. Reaper Apparel Company, a commitment to live your most authentic way every single day. Visit reaperapparelco.com for more information and a look at all of their apparel offerings. And by Good Day Embroidery, your local source for custom embroidery, screen printing, and more. Log on to gooddayembroidery.com for more information. All right, let's get it started. It is night number 2, folks, of Madness Tonight, the recap show for all things March Madness, now including the men's and women's first round of action as the ladies tipped off their tournament earlier on Friday, but we moved into day 2 of the men's tournament. Welcome back in, folks, to Madness Tonight, our second recap show of all things NCAA March Madness. Alongside that man, James Gonzales from up in Oceanside, California. Yours truly, Callan McClurg, joining you down here in San Diego, Mr. Gonzales. Not too many upsets today, though, so another great day of basketball across the board, though, my man. Seeing a couple of very close games, maybe 1 or 2 upsets, but again, not a lot like there was, though, on day 1. But James, glad to have you back aboard, my man, for day 2 of Madness Tonight. How we doing tonight? Good to see you.
Yeah, I watched tons of basketball tonight, women's, men's, and then a little bit of NBA with the Clippers tonight. But yeah, I learned a lot about fundamentals again, and coaches going crazy, up 20, 25 points, whatever the case was.
Looking at you, Dan Hurley.
I think he told a kid to, I don't know if he told a kid on Oklahoma or he told one of his kids to tell one of his teammates to shut up. But there was some jawing going on in that UConn game. Of course, just like you said, Hurley has to get in somewhere.
He's got to put his stamp on the game somehow, some way. But again, folks, this is night 2 of Madness Tonight. I've got 2 whole pages of final scores and the upcoming schedule for both men's and women's hoops. But if you would like to give your thoughts, folks, on what you saw today, just maybe your bracket in general, go ahead and fire away in the live chat box. We'll do our absolute best as usual. Via input on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch, we'll do our absolute best like we usually do to get in and get your thoughts in so far or throughout the course of our show, whether you got great takes, bracket updates, or just thoughts on the day in general. And again, James, I think unlike Thursday, not too much compelling drama today. I think we had one big upset, though, with the Rams of Colorado State upsetting Memphis. Other than that, though, a lot of games were foregone conclusions, it felt like, James. So like we said, like we did the folks on Thursday, we're going to just basically kind of hopscotch around, talk about games in general that caught our eyes, though. We'll talk all 16 games from today, though, both men's and women's tonight. I'll probably talk more about the women's games, just kind of run down the scoreboard when that time does roll around, though. But quick bracket update for those that are wondering. James and I had a great day with our brackets today. James and I going a combined 25-9 today. I won 13 games. James picked up 12 on the afternoon. We have 7 losses combined. So after 2 days, Callan McClurg 24-8. James not too bad either, 22-10 after 2 days of play. So a couple of games that maybe James looked the other way or I looked the other way on kind of cost us. But games like last night, man, let's take that opening tip off to you and let's get to our first game of the night. Where do you want to go?
All right, so last night I told you on our final thoughts, the one game that would really stand out to me today would have been New Mexico, the 10th seed, and number 7 Marquette. Ended up being a real good shootout. New Mexico held on to win 75-66. Donovan Dent scored 21 points for
that guy has
New
been
Mexico.
on a mission, it feels like, James, this whole entire season for UNM. But mainly now through conference play, the conference tournament only got upset, though, but especially when it counts the most right now. And he's just kind of been on a heater the whole season, it feels like.
Yeah, watching him today, he kind of had a game just like he did against the Aztecs at the Pit earlier this season, where he just bobbed and weaved through the defense to make some, impossible layups. But he also had the 3-ball. No, He didn't have a 3-ball, but he had the outside shots going. He was just there was 3 double figures in scoring for the starters there. They just did enough to get it done. Although Nolan came off the bench to get 11, so that was good. But you gotta give it up to Joplin, number 23. He had 28 points. David Joplin, the senior, going out, unfortunately, left it all on the floor for the Golden Eagles. And it felt like I watched Marquette, I think, more than probably New Mexico this year. Whenever they would come on, the Big East games on Saturdays.
On Fox, FS1.
Yeah, I love that. Those games against Creighton, Villanova, Providence,
St.
whomever. St. John's, especially
UConn.
this year. But they always seem to beat each other up, and then they play kind of a staggered kind of offense, and you kind of saw that tonight. They just couldn't get the ball in the basket for Marquette. So, again, the game I looked forward to, it was a good back-and-forth game until it wasn't. New Mexico beating Marquette again 75-66.
Yeah, James, this game felt very even. The Lobos, I think, had a 3-point lead at halftime, though. It was very close early on, though. And really, James, when you kind of look at the whole gist of the story, this game was even, like stat-wise. UNM, 47% from the field. 35% from beyond the arc, 13 turnovers, 36 rebounds. Marquette, 40% from the field, 36.7 from beyond the arc, 12 turnovers, 30 rebounds. Even game, it felt like across the board, though, but when it counted the most, though, James, New Mexico got shots, they got baskets. Marquette went cold at certain points of the game, though, and they really kind of, James, pulled away, they being UNM late in this game. They also, by the way, outscored Marquette in that second half, 40-34. So definitely UNM shooting over Marquette in this game. And I think, like I said, though, James, just a great game to kind of get the show started here. Anything further about New Mexico, man? Because, again, Mountain West Conference, they kind of beat up on each other, too, a lot, as well, as we probably know very well.
Yeah, we all knew that, how would they play on the road? How would they play at a neutral site? The fans really showed up. I saw, even though Marquette.
You want to be in Albuquerque right now, or you want to be in Milwaukee right now?
Well, I know the fans, they rather be at Albuquerque, but they really showed out.
In Cleveland, I should say. Albuquerque.
In Cleveland, yeah. Man, they've seen a lot of great basketball in that arena this year, and this game was kind of, well, at least for New Mexico, they kind of showed out tonight. Especially Donovan Dent. He had a stretch in like 3 minutes where he just scored a bunch, and he was rallying the team.
He's hot.
Yeah.
Feed him.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy going forward. They're going to have to depend on. Maybe I'll talk about it next, who they'll play.
Ooh, yeah, that'll be something when they play again on Sunday. But again, New Mexico, 75-66. They are winners over the Marquette Golden Eagles. Mountain West defeating the Big East. Speaking of the Mountain West, James, another death, taxes, and a 12 beating of 5. Colorado State University takes down the 5-seed Memphis Tigers 70-70. Kyan Evans for the Rams, 23 points, while Dion Danjanai, 22 points for Memphis in a game, James, that they actually had, believe it or not, James, this game opened up with the Rams being a 2.5-point favorite over Memphis. And they ended up winning this ball game. But it was very much, though, James, back and forth. And like I said, though, about the first game as well, big game, James, this game was even. Both teams shot about 42% from the field. Colorado State, though, James, way better beyond the arc, 36.7% from beyond the arc. Memphis, James, they looked lost beyond the arc this afternoon. Also, 6 more turnovers for Memphis, and also 41 rebounds for the Tigers, 34 for the Rams, though. But, James, you say it a lot. You live by the 3, you die by the 3, and that, Sally James, is what killed Memphis in this game. They were up, I think, a couple of points here and there, though, but then they just could not stop Colorado State's offense, though, and they got bombed into submission from beyond the arc. And when they had to get a 3, James, nothing but air and nothing but the rim.
And nothing maybe but the side of the board or the side of the rim.
Yes, that too.
I saw a lot of clinks today, a lot of just, how the nails would go on the old chalkboards? That's how it sounds whenever the ball would hit the side of the backboard or the side of the rim.
Yep.
threes that have no chance of going in. So I saw this. Memphis led 36-31 at the half. And guess what? They were 17-0 this season, leading at the half, Memphis. Until Colorado State today broke that.
And I took that personally.
So Colorado State, they've won their 11th in a row throughout, what was it, 6 regular season games, 4 conference tournament games.
I believe now it's the longest active win streak, I think, in the nation, because UCSD had won 15 in a row entering last night's game with Michigan.
Correct. And Memphis without Tyrese Hunter, you could just tell that they were missing a key piece, and they didn't know how to play without him all year long because he was there all year. When you don't have that piece you can rely on and you're just scrapping like you saw, and then what you mentioned with the 3-pointers not going down and the shots not going down, it's just a recipe for a disaster. You face a hot team like Colorado State, the Rams. You can ram it all day. You can ram it all night. That was just great to see. I was happy for the Mountain West, and then for Colorado State that had to earn their way in the conference, win the conference tournament, and get in like that. Probably made a lot of people happy with whoever bet on them tonight.
So again, the Rams of Colorado State take down Memphis. Death taxes, 12s beating 5, 78-70. The Rams over the Tigers from Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. Mr. Gonzales, the ball goes back to you.
Yeah, that's been a great venue so far, Seattle hosting that. I've kind of enjoyed, what's her name? Bennington.
Lisa Byington.
Jalen Rose and Robbie Hummel. They have fun discussions during the games, especially in the blowouts. They have, and I
believe, if memory serves me correct, I believe that Tom McCarthy of the Phillies is working with Debbie Antonelli, I believe, if memory serves me correct.
And Tom is really good. I followed him for a long time.
James, before we give you the possession arrow back, our good man Sarge, Tim Fiddler says, was not surprised whatsoever by the Rams winning. And I think, James, that, maybe this goes to what I always say, though. Again, death, taxes, 12s beating 5s. I think Sarge is probably right, or probably agrees, though, James. Maybe we could say that the Rams wanted it more, though, James. But like we just said, though, Memphis's 3-point shooting is what really, I think, broke their back in this ball game. Like, every time that they had a possession, they tried to go for 3, clank, 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 back rim, side of the backboard, top of the backboard, or air balls. Like, that's where, like you said, though, James, on Thursday, if you live by the 3, you will die by the 3. Case closed here. End of story.
Yeah, it's just I heard a lot of clinks today. Not good. I
also saw a lot of missed free throws today across every game I watched.
There was one game where it kind of hurt.
One game it was awful.
Yeah.
Like, come on, fellas. But now, James, possession goes back to you.
By the way, I think they should do away with the possession arrow and have jump balls. What do you think?
If they go to quarters, I would say yes.
Yeah, and that too. That was another thing on C2C.
Quarters, actual jump balls, 5 team fouls, 6 personal fouls. Yes. There you go.
I'm perfect with that. All right, so I was just talking about the South bracket there for Cleveland and New Mexico winning. They will take on number 2 Sparty, Michigan State. They blow out Bryant. There's a lot of Bulldogs in this tournament. I noticed.
They were the Bears. I must have butchered that on the bracket show.
Brown Bears.
Yes, that's who I was.
Maybe the
too many Bears, too many Wildcats, too many Tigers, too many Aggies,
Cougars.
Only
2 Spartans I know of, and one of them won tonight.
And Michigan State.
Yeah, San Jose State too. So 3.
Yeah,
87. Oh yeah. 87-62. They beat up Bryant. They just kept scoring at will.
Yeah, but James, that was the first half though. That was kind of wonky. Like Bryant jumped out. I think we talked about this though on Thursday that sometimes the lower seeds they got that early pop in their pep in their step though. Then you kind of know it's coming. But they were behind, they being Michigan State, they were down a little bit here now. Again, first game jitters, and it is a thing. I know that Tom, that Izzo probably had that look like I'm going to ring these guys a new one. This game's all said and done. Like, come on, are you freaking kidding me? But regardless, still, like you were going to say though, James, I'm sure. I mean, Steeler Thunder though, plus 20 in the second half, 54-34.
Yeah, it was definitely a tale of two halves, but I think Michigan State just finally woke up late in that first half to say, okay, we know we can beat these guys. We played the juggernaut of the Big Ten conference schedule, and so that was really important there. But credit to Bryant for staying in it as long as they could. But you could just tell the talent underneath, especially the big guy scoring for Michigan State underneath. The Bulldogs had no chance of guarding anyone. Some standouts: Jason Richardson's son had 15 points, and I just love that because he was aggressive, but he's also very passive. But that's fine. But there's sometimes where he needs to probably take advantage of his skills and score more. Jace Richardson, the freshman here from Denver. I noticed that the father was in the crowd. I'm thinking, man, I feel old with Jason in the crowd.
Jay Rich.
Fears Jr. and Atkins both had 11, and then Carr had 18 off the bench. He kind of led them with the energy in the second half. Hallman had 14 points, but inside there was a lot of points being scored, and they just ended up routing the Bulldogs there. Finally, some normalcy. Tom Izzo in March, Mr. March, whatever you want to call him. That really showed tonight. So we'll have New Mexico and Michigan State for the next round there in Cleveland. I cannot wait for that one.
James, I just have two stats. One good, one bad for Sparty. Where do you want me to start? Bad or good?
Bad.
11 turnovers in the game to 7 for Bryant. Take care of the rock, as they usually say. The good news, though, they out-rebounded Bryant 54-29.
That's what I was talking about with the size advantage inside. Bryant had no one to get the centers inside or the forwards.
So, again, Sparty over Bryant, 82-67. Final score for the Spartans over the Bryant Bulldogs. A quick hello and good evening to our good man, Casey King, who is back home from his trip to Chicago. He also says that his bracket is personally looking great, as he also picked the Rams over the Tigers today, 78-70 for Colorado State, as mentioned earlier in the block. James, I'm going to stay with another West Coast program, literally in the West Coast Conference, the Conference of Callan McClurg. The St. Mary's College Gales, James, found themselves playing 10-seeded Vanderbilt earlier in the evening. And, James, the Gales finally showed up late in the ballgame, and they were able to take down Vanderbilt. So the West Coast Conference, Callan McClurg's conference, James, is 2-0 against the almighty SEC Conference. And people say that I don't know ball. Give me a break. 59-56 in favor of the Gales over Vanderbilt in this ball game for St. Mary's College of California, who found themselves trailing by 7 at the end of one half of play, though, but outscored Vandy 37-27. They got 15 points from Jordan Ross, while Jason Edwards did all he could for the Commodores with 18 points in the ball game. More importantly, James, in this game, both teams dead even when it came to field goal percentage. 9 turnovers for the Gales, but James, much like the Michigan State game, the Gales out-rebound the Commodores 41-28 down low. So St. Mary's wins. Callan McClurg's conference is now 2-0 versus the SEC, and I do know ball. So there you go, Mr. You know who you are. But James, how about thoughts? 2 times in a row here that the WCC's gotten a couple of dubs over the SEC, and more importantly, I'll say this much, James. As much as people always love Mark Few in Gonzaga, Randy Bennett, UCSD alum, he's quietly, James, been one of the if not 1B, if not 1A, best coaches in the West Coast Conference. I mean, for what he's done with longevity, the longstanding Australian pipeline, a la Patty Mills, who played at St. Mary's. Randy Bennett, man, has made this St. Mary's team, other than Zaga, easily the best team in the West Coast Conference. Now, of course, the Zags and the Gales both won their first-round games, again, beating SEC schools. But, James, maybe, do you believe that Randy Bennett, before you give your thoughts on the game, Does Randy Bennett not get enough credit, though, at St. Mary's because he's kind of in the shadow of Mark Few and Gonzaga in the WCC?
I think that's very fair. Even though St. Mary's always goes to the tournament, you always have Gonzaga going further. But now this is the first year where I kind of feel even in a way coming out
Agreed.
of the
Absolutely.
tournament.
Very much so.
So that's why you're having more spotlight on St. Mary's coach than Few. But, both were able to move on. I think it's just fitting that both were able to move on the same day. So, yeah, he gets overshadowed. There's no doubt about it. I will mention inside, Saxon had 12 points and 11 rebounds. Barrett had 12 points and 10 rebounds. It went back to rebounding inside, definitely for St. Mary's. Vanderbilt had a chance at the end to make a three, but didn't. Gotta give it to them. But, yeah, 4 players in double figures in the starting lineup for
and a couple of double-doubles in there, too.
Yeah, you always love to have that. It was just Edwards for Vanderbilt getting 18 points, but they only shot 8 for 26 from downtown. So that's going to kill Vandy there. St. Mary's was able to do it all with Marshallanis with 14 points. I know he was getting busy inside as well. So good overall tournament win, I think, for St. Mary's. Be interesting how they do going forward, and if they go further than Gonzaga this tournament, I think now you'll start getting the attention more. Bennett. Yeah, I think that's going to be the case.
I would, James. I agree 100%. Because I think that it's Mark Few. Bennett's close, and it's everybody else in the West Coast Conference that I think you're right, though. If the Gales go maybe 1 round further, maybe 2 rounds further than Zaga, I would buy that argument, though, about perhaps the Gales maybe kind of becoming now. Should be noted, though, that the Zags are out of the WCC come, I believe, next year. So that kind of, in a way, puts St. Mary's now as an upper echelon team right now, barring further realignment. But again, WCC, Callan McClurg 2, SEC 0 head-to-head so far in Miss Rate. And yes, Callan McClurg knows ball. A couple of thoughts real quick from Casey King. He also says, James, the Lobos were another one of my upset picks. Michigan State I have getting to the Final Four. Never rule out a team led by Tom Izzo, a.k.a. James, Mr. March.
I didn't have Sparty going to the Final Four. I may regret that, or I may not. We'll find out on Sunday. Was that it for the cup? Oh, yeah. Okay. What was it? We'll go. You mentioned Colorado State, that game. We're going to have the opponent against Colorado State on Sunday. It was Maryland blowing out Grand Canyon University. Woo! Oh, my God.
Thanks for showing up, fellas.
I picked Grand Canyon. How much of a, what do I feel? 81-49. They didn't really. That was like a high school game right there. Maryland, man, it just feels like they were doing anything they wanted to do in that game. GCU, it just felt like they were scoring, but it was at a snail's pace. Meanwhile, Maryland was going
long,
pretty
sustained
fast.
Droughts, blocked shots, missing shots, you name it.
More of the same with Maryland having 4 in double figures. And Jalen Rose was actually doing this game. And they mentioned for Maryland, they have a thing out there where they call it the Crab 5 instead of the Fab 5.
I heard that today. The Crab 5, not the Fab 5, the Crab 5. I love it.
So Reese had 18, Gillespie had 16, Miguel had 13, Queen had 12. He was getting busy inside. He had 15 rebounds along with the 12 points. And he said that was the first double-double that a Terp has had since 2019 in a tournament game.
And not just that, they were plus 11 in rebounding margin, 44-33 over the Lopes.
That'll do it. And then GCU, just to end this horrible pick of mine, was 5 for 23 from downtown. Just couldn't get it done, and then they tried to just overdo it, it felt like. But Maryland, 4th seed, as I mentioned, they haven't been this good in a while. They look really, really strong, and I just hope they keep it going. They will face those Colorado State University Rams on Sunday. So that's going to be interesting seeing like toughness versus what Colorado State does with the hot shooting. Can, the Terps kind of stop that? I'm wondering that.
And not to be dismissed, though, of GCU, but Tyon Grant Foster, 23 points to lead the way for the Lopes out of the WAC. 81-49 as mentioned. The Terps over the Lopes today in their first round matchup. Some more thoughts real quick. Casey King says go St. Mary's. And he says, yes, the West Coast Conference, hello, is looking good. Again, 2-0 versus the SEC. I know. We don't play football, folks, so this is where we make our money with basketball. Casey says that he also picked Grand Canyon, James. So don't feel bad. And, boy, they were pure doo-doo today.
That was one of the picks where I thought, man, I'll have a better record if they upset them. But...
And you know what? I was kind of in the same predicament case as James of like, do I go with Grand Canyon? What do I do? But I flipped the coin and it said, no, pick Maryland. And waving hello to Christy Wilson, who joins us from Montana. Glad to have everyone on board for night 2 of Madness Tonight here on C2C. All right, James, I said on Thursday that in order to be the champ or to be the man, you've got to beat the man. So, of course, 8 seed UConn was in action tonight versus 9 seed Oklahoma. Dan Hurley tried to interject himself in this ball game, but it was really no problem for the Huskies to begin the pursuit of a three-peat. They knock off Oklahoma. 8-9 again, though, James. Not that much of an upset, though, if it would have gone the other way. 67-59, UConn defeats Oklahoma tonight in round number 1. The Huskies led 32-26 at half and then put up 35 points in the second half to win the game, as mentioned, 67-59 over Oklahoma. Solo ball, 14 points for Oklahoma, while Jeremiah Fears had 20 points for Oklahoma in this ball game for a final score. More importantly, though, James, in this contest, Dan Hurley, though, James, will not like the 13 turnovers, but he will like the 41-34 advantage in the rebounding department in this game. So, James, at least for game 1, it looked pretty good for UConn tonight.
Yeah, you know how you mentioned or you asked me, hey, do you want to know the bad stat or the good stat first? I kind of put on my coach's hat saying, I need to know the bad to separate the good and try to fix the bad. I wanted to see how Oklahoma would come out in this game. They had low spurts of energy, Fears with 20 points, Moore with 14. Wagoo had 9 points, but 12 rebounds. He was kind of a force inside until he wasn't, until he got kind of tired in a way. But UConn, they used what they could, the scoring by, again, Ball and Carban. That was really good. Then Reed off the bench, Reed Jr. with 12 points. Dara kind of setting the pace, getting his 7 rebounds. McNeely with 8 points and 6 rebounds. Even though they didn't shoot the 3 ball well, UConn held on. And then, oh, God. The thing I hate talking about, you have to talk about, because Oklahoma went 3 for 17 from downtown. And that really killed them in the end, with UConn scoring and then possessing, getting the offensive rebounds as well. Just totally controlled that ball game, I think. And that's why UConn held on.
Yeah, and James, I was really wondering, though, how would this UConn team be? Again, we have talked at length, though, on Thursday. We've talked at length on the bracket show about, okay, Dan Hurley cost his team a couple of games. So what would happen if they began to fall off the rails? Would he start going after the refs? I think there was some chirping going on amongst him and a couple of OU players when the game was already out of reach, things of that nature. But it really wasn't that much of a problem, though, James. But I do think, though, it'll be probably a tough or rude awakening for UConn in round 2.
Yeah, the further the tournament goes, the higher the stakes and the higher the heat comes on. So I wouldn't be surprised you see Hurley getting a tick somehow. All right, we'll go to the East bracket. I guess we have to talk about it. Duke, number 1 Duke, my champion pick. Cooper Flagg came out and played, and he really shined. He had a couple of dunks. They beat up Mount St. Mary's 93-49. It was a total, I think, team effort, though, by Duke. Cooper Flagg had Tyrese Proctor had 19 points, and Cooper Flagg really showed out, coming back from his ankle injury that looked really bad. I mean, he was, in a wheelchair. Looked like he wasn't going to be ready to play. I think they held him out of the conference tournament, and they were still able to go through it very well. But he had 14 points. Proctor with 19, like I mentioned. Foster with 12 off the bench. Just really, really good stuff. Mount St. Mary's and Mount, they just really never had a chance in this game. Their highest scorer had 15 off the bench. They were just trying to find anybody that could come on and just get hot for a little while, and they kind of did. I do have to mention this. There's one player that has a name of two schools that are in this tournament. Xavier Lipcomb.
Xavier Lipscomb. I love it.
There's a player at Mount St. Mary's with two schools that are now out, of course. But
foreshadowing.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny. But yeah, Duke just looked like themselves. But I want to see him, against a better opponent, let's just say.
Yeah, I agree, and it sucks though that Cooper Flagg's able to come back, and it's in a game.
They didn't even need him today.
Yeah, I mean they could have. They literally could have sat him. They could have maybe let him play a few minutes, and once the game became the blowout it became, just put him on, park him on the bench and rest him up for round 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought they were gonna do, but they had him timed pretty well and didn't let him play too much where it would have hurt him. Because they're going to need him for the next game, I guarantee it.
Without a doubt, absolutely. Let's move on, James, to my next game I want to talk about. Let's go to the first game of the day, another 9/8. This was a great game, James. Baylor over Mississippi State, 75-72. This game was close, James. It was back and forth. It was all about, some foul trouble early in the game. Robert Wright III for Baylor, 19 points in the game. Josh Hubbard played out of his mind for Hail State, 26 points in the ball game, but ultimately on the short end of a stick, though, as the Bears sick them and beat the Bulldogs 75-72 to kick off today's action on this Friday evening. James, this was a great game. I know I picked Hail State, though, but it was back and forth. No lead was really out of reach. Everyone kept, counter punch, though. And Josh Hubbard, James, I mean, I salute him, man. He played his ass off tonight or today for Mississippi State, though, but just a little bit short there. And good win for Baylor, though, man, over Mississippi State, though. Great game between the Big 12 and the SEC.
Yeah, the unfortunate part, VJ Edgecombe did not have a good game. He had 4 points.
He looked really off in this game.
He had a big dunk that didn't go in. It kind of woke up the building, though, and the intensity just kept going on from there. But I think it took Baylor's rebounding presence to make it happen. That was pretty big. Omie had 4 offensive rebounds for Baylor, so that was really helpful in that game. Edgecombe would end up, scoring 14 points, 4 or 10 more in the second half. So that did work. But Wright, the third, had 19, 4 double-figure Bears in the starting lineup. Again, that always helps. You have, them playing the most minutes, of course. It looked like it was just Hubbard, and then Harris Jr. only with 13. They did have a couple bench players come on because there were there were 3 starters that didn't do well for Mississippi State, and that kind of hurt them when you think about it. Baylor's just they played kind of a tough kind of brand of basketball. They've always done that.
Always.
I noticed that when they won the 2021 national championship, I noticed that was the case over Gonzaga. And they just kept that going. It's really a program that is really good in a lot of sports, and college basketball, both women's and men, they're always good in it. So yeah, they will play Duke on Sunday. Don't know if they'll have enough, but they're going to have to do it with that grit.
Yeah, grit. Grit and determination will be the deciding factor. And James Casey King agrees. Yep, I agree. That game, fellas, was a great game today, indeed. Boy, I was sweating that one, but Baylor got it done. Yeah, I mean, anytime you get a game, James, and I think this is probably similar to what we said, though, on Thursday, is that sometimes in the first 2 days of a tournament, you have a lot of the lopsided affairs. So you have maybe the occasional game, like UCSD and Michigan or this game today. these games, these kind of games, James, they feel very kind of much far, few and in between. Today we had St. Mary's and Vanderbilt, and then we had this game where you got a close game at least, which I think is all you can really ask for in the first couple days of a tournament.
The longer the tournament goes, the closer games you're going to get. And I just can't wait for some of those days. As we stay in that East bracket, can I just get rid of these two games, honestly?
Yeah, two birds with one stone. Please go for it.
We're going to have a old Pac-12 second round matchup. And I guess that's why I want this, because these were the two best for a long time in the Pac-12. Other from UCLA getting in there a few years. That's pretty much it. Whenever USC was relevant. But Oregon, number 5, they defeat Liberty, who was number 12, 81-52. Just Dana Altman, he just knows how to win in that first round, no matter who he has. Jackson Shellestad had a really good game, had 17 points, 15 of those in the first half. They led by 24 at half, and they just kept it on. Did Oregon. Like I said, Shellestad was 17, so that was really good. I didn't really expect or know how much Oregon had, but they were just... It felt like they were decent in that Pac-10 the first year there, but they were highly above...
everybody else.
The teams that came in from the Big 12, or the Pac-12, UCLA was there as well, but being 25-9, they're really good. Barthélemy had 10, and then Biddle had 14. Had some contributions from the bench, but overall it's a good team effort for Oregon. Now, they will face number 4 ranked, in the seeding, 4th seed, Arizona Wildcats on Sunday. They beat the Akron Zips 93-65. Obviously, you could tell that was going to be a blowout. And Caleb Love didn't really do much, but
because they didn't have to do a whole lot today because they're playing Akron, sadly. Yeah,
I think they were, like we were talking about, Cooper Flagg kind of saving him for later.
Saving Caleb Love for a more important game.
He only played 25 minutes, had 10 points, but Bradley had 19, Townsend 16, Bryant coming off the bench had 12. Just more of the same for Arizona in these games. They avenged, was it last year or I think it was a few years ago where they lost in the first round, and that was really embarrassing. I think it was a couple years ago where they were, for me, I picked them to win it all, but they lose in the first round.
Yeah, they lost really early that year, and it was like, oh, great, thanks a lot, Arizona, for nothing.
My bracket was just busted from there, so it will be.
And I stopped watching when that happened.
Yeah, no, I didn't, but it was just like it just felt worthless after that. So what was it? It's going to be number 5 Oregon facing number 4. Alabama, Arizona. You think conference realignment's happening? Yeah. Number 5 Oregon, number 5 Oregon, number 4 Arizona on Sunday. I will be tuning in because I was always used to those games, and whether it was in Vegas at T-Mobile Arena or up in Eugene or Tucson, I was always locked in, of course.
Holly Pavilion.
Against those two, against those two. Always good games with them. The coach is always good, of course. The name of I see his face at Arizona, the new coach, but he's always good wherever he's been. And Dana Altman, probably a Hall of Famer one day. I just can't wait for that old Pac-12 matchup on Sunday.
The glory days of the Conference of Champions. Where's Bill Walton? That way we need him, damn it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to move, James, to probably one of the more surprising games on our schedule. Alabama had their hands full today with 15-seeded Robert Morris, the Colonials out of the Horizon League. Bama got the job done, though, 90-81. But, James, far from this being a regular 2 versus 15, how about Bama only being up by 4 points at halftime over RMU? Amarian Dickerson saluted and tip of the cap to him from RMU, 25 points in the ballgame. Mark Sears, though, leading the way for the Tide, 22 points in the ball game for the Tide, who, by the way, James, Alabama opened up as a 21.5-point favorite and won the game by 9 over the Colonials on Friday. James, what a great game, though. Now, Bama shot the lights out, though, 58% from the field. They also held RMU to 42% from the field and also a 25.9% clip from beyond the arc, though. But the Tide also lost the turnover margin 12-9, and they were out-rebounded by a +2 today in that ball game. But still, though, James, tip of the hat, salute to RMU, 90-81 losing to Bama after being a 21.5-point underdog.
I think a lot of people, a lot of analysts were saying, hey, don't be surprised if this game is closer than what people thought, obviously.
9-point win.
If you took the under, you felt good. Yeah, Dickinson, like you mentioned, 25. They had 4 starters in double figures, and that really worked well for Robert Morris, especially at the beginning. I was watching a little bit of that because I just couldn't believe it. Because
I think I was watching that game almost in its entirety because it was so damn close. Like, Bama really never pulled away like we all thought they probably would have or should have or could have done, though. And RMU said, we're not going to take this. We're going to be all the way into the game till the very end, and they were.
Yeah, that's always good when you get someone that, especially a 15 seed, they don't have much of a chance. But like we saw with McNeese yesterday, you just never know. Alabama, playing in that gauntlet of the SEC, especially in the conference tournament, they were out. They had some close games this year, but they're worthy of that number 2 seed. But it's also kind of a lesson for whoever plays them to say, hey, they're beatable. If we ever play them, if you're in the same bracket, we can get after them. So it'll be interesting to see what Alabama is able to do better, let's just say, going forward.
So again, Alabama holding off Robert Morris, 90-81, a final score in that game. With that in mind, James, alternating possession favors Gonzales.
Goodness, what else happened today? I guess Florida Norfolk State went on earlier today. Florida just held their rank as the number 1 seed. I'm kind of wondering if I should have picked them for being the national champion, but they won 95-69 over Norfolk State. That was pretty much a easy game there. Clayton Jr., he was really showing out, 23 points, 4 from 9 from downtown. He was really good. Martin ended up with 17, Condon with 12, and then Hogg coming out with 13. Not much from Norfolk. They had a couple of guys in double figures. I think the game probably came down to, let's see here. Not really much rebounding, but it just came down to scoring and just came down to Walter Clayton Jr. going off. And like I mentioned, I think in the preview show on Thursday, or was it Wednesday? No, Thursday. Wednesday, yeah, duh. That Florida, they're really strong, really long team, really deep, I should say, from the bench on, starters on, I mean. So you just knew that they were going to get this win pretty easy and then just see how they go through the tournament. But a very easy win today.
Yeah, kind of like another day at the office for the Gators, and Casey agrees that his pick to win it all is, in fact, the Florida Gators. James, let's just get this game out of the way, too. It's probably not the game you're thinking of, James. North Carolina. All we heard, James, was about, they don't deserve to be here. They don't deserve to be here. Then yada, 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 yada. Oh, guess what, folks? They're out. So if you want to, throw the parade, please do, as they get beat by Ole Miss today. 71-64. RJ Davis cannot capture lightning in the bottle. He had 15 points and went 6 of 17 from beyond the arc as opposed to that game over San Diego State. They were down big time, 44-26 at the half, and Ole Miss moves on after knocking out UNC. So, James, all the hullabaloo about North Carolina getting in, guess what? It stopped right there in round 1. Case closed.
Yeah, in this game, I was watching a lot of it, but I could just tell that, Ole Miss had more of the game, more of the power, I should say. North Carolina went on little spurts, but they ended up not having enough, I think, talent to get it done in scoring. They only had a couple guys that would double figures. Meanwhile, Ole Miss looks like they just did it with scoring, basically. Padilla was shooting 50% from the field with 20 points there. Davis with 15. Brakefield with 12 coming off the bench. That was huge in this game. I think if they don't have that, then you would have North Carolina. It would have came down maybe to the last shot. I know UNC was trying to play the foul game late. But I think, what's crazy here, I don't think Hubert Davis should be on the hot seat at all just for getting in. But if he has maybe a couple of years like this, maybe he can be on the hot seat. But he's one of those coaches that he got hired from within the program.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to actually go away with him, but maybe if you have a couple of years where you're not competing with Duke, then again, maybe that seat gets hotter. But for Ole Miss, it was good because they kind of blocked out that whole, North Carolina noise that was coming in. Like, we're coming in, yelling and raging on, saying, hey, they don't want us here. They don't want us here. And they just took care of their business today. So that was really good for Ole Miss. I didn't know what to expect from them.
So again, final score there once more: Ole Miss 71, UNC 64. James, you want to go two birds, one stone for the last two games that are on the docket of Iowa State, Lipscomb, and then Illinois and Xavier?
Yeah, exactly. Ole Miss will take on Iowa State on Sunday as number 3 Iowa State weathered any type of storm. 82-55 over Lynchcomb. That was pretty much a solid game for Iowa State. Momcliff, probably not the way you say it, but he had 20 points. You had 2 guys other with double figures on the in the starting lineup for Iowa State. It just doesn't, I guess because I'm an NBA guy too, where the scoring is just outrageous. But you look at box scores and you're like, well, that's not much scoring. But then you look at the scores and there's less minutes, of course. Excuse me.
Only 40. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I gotta get used to this. But Lynchcomb had 2 guys in double figures. Couldn't really do much else. And again, it came down to a 3-ball, 8 for 28 from downtown. But Iowa State didn't fare any better. They were 7 for 19. Better percentage, but less made. But yeah, not much else to say. I'm looking forward to this game though on Sunday with number 3 Iowa State against number 6 Ole Miss. These are kind of 2 teams that you don't really know about. Maybe they were put on upset alert, but they took care of their business. Now they clash on Sunday.
And also the other game, Illinois, James over Xavier, 86-73. So both play-in teams gave it their best shot, but no cigar.
Eventually that happens. I feel like I was just watching that Illinois game. Yeah, against Xavier. And, of course, I picked Xavier.
As did I. I mean, I picked Xavier and UNC because we all were maybe led to believe, okay, you play a game before the rest of the tournament. Maybe you're kind of get yourself warmed up, though. But I feel like, though, that Xavier probably had it a little bit worse because I think they had to exert all their energy to come back to beat Texas in that game as opposed to UNC having a walk in the park with San Diego State.
Yeah, and Illinois, being the 6th seed, they beat number 11 Xavier 86-73. Will Riley, who I found out is Canadian, the best player they've got at Illinois. They've scouted and they were able to recruit in a long time. I mean, probably since Darren Williams, the last time
Darren Williams comes to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that shows you how long it's been. But he couldn't connect on the 3 shots that he attempted. He ended up scoring, though, 22 points. And it was I can say this for every game, but it was a total team effort. 4 guys in double figures with the starting lineup there with Riley going off. He went on a hot streak, 8 for 12 from the field. That always do you well. Hit 12 3-pointers. That was also big. Riley was 3 for 4 from downtown. So look out when they play when they move on Sunday. They play Kentucky to see how much Riley can go off. But I bet Kentucky with Mark Pope, they will really focus on Will Riley. And I think that was the only game we missed was Kentucky over Troy. It was early in that game. Troy was in it, but Kentucky ended up winning 76-57, number 3 over number 14.
So with that in mind, folks, another day of men's college hoops in the books. Here is your Saturday schedule of games. We'll have McNeese and Purdue at 9:10 a.m. Pacific time. Arkansas, St. John's. Patino versus Calipari at 11:40 a.m. Michigan, Texas A&M at 2:15. Drake and Texas Tech at 3:10. Creighton versus Auburn at 4:10 in the afternoon. BYU, Wisconsin, 4:45 in the afternoon. Gonzaga in Houston at 5:40. And UCLA faces Tennessee at 6:40 in the evening. And to begin day number 3 of men's college basketball action. Switching gears real quick to a rundown of the women's scoreboard now across our screens. A couple of blowouts, couple of surprises maybe, and a major injury to talk about too in this segment here that I'll kind of run through here for you folks real quick. Today was officially day 1 of the women's women's March Madness tournament. Michigan over Iowa State, 80-74. Kentucky barely scrapes by Liberty, 79-78. Indiana over Utah in their contest, 76-68. Notre Dame, folks. Now, James, here's the big one here. Notre Dame defeats Stephen F. Austin 106-54. However, James, reports, though, have come out in this ball game that Olivia Miles, who had done a lot of work to come back from a previous injury, re-injured herself today in this blowout win over Stephen F. Austin. And a lot of the Irish fans, James, are irate at team head coach Niall Ivey for keeping Miles and the starters in the ball game with a 40-point plus lead. And per the reports gathered, James, that head coach Niall Ivey has taken the major brunt of the stick of criticism from fans on social media after Olivia Miles injured her left ankle in the Irish's dominating win over Stephen F. Austin earlier on Friday. The Irish had the Lady Jacks' number, easily outplaying them in the first round of the tournament. And heading to the fourth quarter, Notre Dame had held a 78-41 lead when Ivy elected to keep the Stars in the game to what she called ensure a smooth victory. However, though, with the Irish up 82-43 with 8:44 to play in the game, Miles, one of the top players in college basketball and one of the top pick choices for the upcoming WNBA draft, appeared to injure her ankle and remained on the floor as her teammates surrounded her. The star guard was helped off the court, able to walk off on her own power, but did not come back to the ball game, though, which led, though, to many fans, though, on social media questioning the coach's ideas to keep her in the game. One fan on Twitter wrote that I want to be happy about us winning this game, but I can't go with the fact, though, that Olivia Miles just went down, so I'm feeling mixed emotions. James, this, I believe, also happened with Gino Auriemma a couple of years ago when he was keeping Paige Beckers in games like this, and Paige ended up getting hurt, which, in a way, cost UConn their chance to snap their nearly decade-long drought. So, James, do you believe it's fair, though? Now, we know about the scoreboard. I hear all this baloney about unwritten rules, which does not mean one damn thing because it's not in the rule book. It does not matter. I don't want to hear about game ethics or any of that sort of stuff, though. You're playing to win a game. I get that part, though. But, James, why, though, does Notre Dame not know how to pull the parachute here? When I say that, though, it's about, like we said about Cooper Flag. Now, I know we're comparing apples and oranges, though. But realizing, though, the game's in the bag. Don't go out there and risk a player like a Paige Beckers, a Flau'jae Johnson, a Olivia Miles. Don't risk the star players getting hurt in round 1. Like I think, James, we saw, though, with Flag and other big guys who were a part of, on the men's side of things. You got to learn, though, when to kind of, in a way, pull that parachute and pull them out, though. So, James, is the criticism, though, of head coach Niall Ivey warranted for Olivia Miles if she's maybe out for their next game coming up in round 2?
For some reason, I'm reading that the coach mentioned that Miles should be okay, but I guess that was from earlier.
But even then, though, what do you think about this? I think, though,
right.
Look at the scoreboard.
What was the score again?
106-54.
No, at the time at 8:44.
I believe it was 82-43, I want to say.
Oh, yeah, no. I don't care what time it is, especially when it's a senior player as well.
82-43.
Yeah, that's
and the fourth quarter was barely not even 2 minutes old when she got hurt.
Right. Yeah, you gotta know when to pull the cord or whatever you mentioned with the parachute. I don't know. Tournament time, you're in it, and you're in a mode. I think for the Coach Ivy. So that's a tough call, but you have to realize, it's a whole tournament, and you have to keep
not
everybody
just one
healthy.
game.
Yeah, and then you gotta know who you're playing. Yes, it is Stephen F. Austin. They are 29-6.
They're still a pretty damn good team,
right? You always believe that if you start to let your guard down, that you'll get pissed if they go on like an 18-4 run, and then you have to bring your starters in anyway. But that's a tough call for the coach, but because you don't want to look vulnerable as well. I feel 50-50 on that, but also you have to read the room and read the numbers as well. So that's why it's so hard to coach, especially I think in the tournament, because if that happened to Cooper Flagg, not only are we talking about draft status like we are with Miles here, you're talking about maybe your team not advancing in the next round.
So much at stake.
I think they feel like Notre Dame. They feel like they're deep anyway. I was reading here with Hannah Hidalgo, Sonia Citron. They both had 24 points. Lisa Carlin had 13 and 10 boards. Hidalgo mentioned we have a lot of firepower.
Which they do.
So maybe that's why they left him in, but still, with that much time and you're up 39 points, it doesn't look well. Let's just say that.
So again, Notre Dame women over Stephen F. Austin, 106-54. But again, Olivia Miles, though, jarring the ankle again, and mainly more so Notre Dame fans. I wouldn't even say James women's basketball fans voicing their displeasure, I guess, about the Irish Stars remaining in the ball game with the game well out of reach, though. And again, Olivia Miles, who I believe just came back earlier this year from a ripped ACL, now having this on her plate too. So that's more. I think that's more about why I think that the Irish fan base is like, what you're like, oh my God, what are we doing? Like why now exactly?
Yeah.
But we'll get back to the scores though from day one. First full day of the women's March Madness tournament. K-State defeats Fairfield 85-41. Baylor over Grand Canyon 73-60. TCU and Haley Van Lift's great run continues. They beat Farley Dickinson 73-51. South Carolina pummeling poor Tennessee Tech 108-48 in Columbia earlier on Friday. Oregon over Vanderbilt 77-73. Ohio State beating up on Montana State 71-51. Louisville over Nebraska in a nail biter 63-58. Ole Miss defeats Ball State 83-65. Richmond, yes, the Richmond Spiders clobbering Georgia Tech 74-49. Tennessee all over South Florida 101-66. Duke all over poor Lehigh University 86-25, and UCLA beats in on Southern University 84-46. So, James, we go now from that to a full day of women's basketball as well tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp. Murray State will be taking on, can't even read my own handwriting here. They'll be in action at 9 a.m. against what looks like Oklahoma. Might have that wrong, though. Arkansas State plays UConn at 10 a.m. Bama takes on Green Bay at 10:30 in the morning. West Virginia takes on Columbia at 11 a.m. Also at 11 a.m. as well is going to be North Carolina State playing Vermont at 11 a.m. Florida Gulf Coast takes on Oklahoma officially at 11:30 a.m. The number one seed, USC Trojans, will take on UNC Greensboro at high noon. Oklahoma State will take on South Dakota State at 12:30 in the afternoon. Maryland and Norfolk State at 1 o'clock. Harvard, Michigan State at 1:30. Mississippi State will play Cal at 2:30. Illinois at 4:15 in the afternoon. George Mason takes on Florida State at 4:45 p.m. William and Mary, their first ever berth, I believe, ever in the women's tournament, will take on number one seed Texas at 6:45 p.m. And San Diego State gets to face Flau'jae Johnson, Kim Mulkey, and LSU at 7:15 to round out the second full day of women's college basketball action. And James, that's the whole show. We got through every game they wanted to get to, got through some of the big news in women's college hoops. James, this is uncharted territory. We've done 2 straight shows that have gone an hour for you and me. It's hard to do, though. But James, put a lid on it. Final thoughts. What do you got?
Yeah, 3 things with the women's tournament. You mentioned that Fairleigh Dickinson game. I was watching the second quarter of that, and it looks like Fairleigh Dickinson, they took the first quarter, and Haley Van Lilith only scored 13, but luckily Connor had the brunt of the scoring for TCU. And then you mentioned Illinois is going to be playing Creighton tomorrow. That should be interesting there. And then, I cannot wait for that USC game. I want to see how far Juju Watkins can take the Lady Trojans.
I got them in the Final Four.
Yeah, it seems like eventually UCLA, USC.
I want UCLA, USC round 2. I mean, or like round 4. I mean, I want to. Yeah, I want to see Betts and Watkins go at it because every game, James, has been so damn entertaining.
The only part is that in the game 3, the Big Ten tournament, UCLA just woke up in that second half and
especially
the quarter,
late in the fourth quarter.
And then they just out-hustled the Lady Trojans.
And the Trojans cannot get a basket to save their life, sadly.
I was watching that. I was pissed. But the Lady Aztecs, they have a big task going to play LSU there. That's going to be very, very tough. I wouldn't be shocked if that's a blowout, but we'll see. Yeah, it's a great time of year, and I don't know when I'm leaving the house. Maybe early in the morning, but I'm coming back in to watch the games for sure, both sides.
James, in case you were curious, LSU is a 26.5-point favorite over San Diego State.
Okay.
By the way, the women of Troy, James, the Trojans, 32.5-point favorites over UNC Greensboro.
I'm lucky I don't bet. They have these signs on the scores tables like
don't. And I think it's been great though. But in reality though, D1, D2 announcer here, I love seeing it though because I think the commercials are so right though, James. And I know that we're kind of talking March Madness here though, but I think just across the board, I recall. Here talking on press row about, Donovan Mitchell and Bickerstaff at one point were barking at fans about, shut up, I don't care about your prop bets, be quiet, I don't care about your fantasy lineup. Look at Brent Rooker of the A's who was going after fans on Twitter, like, I don't care when I hit a home run, like, F your parlay, I'm trying to win a ball game for my team. So I love, though, that the NCAA is trying their best to kind of crack down on that sort of stuff, though, about it's what, these are college kids. It's like I said, though, when you had asked me, James, about the whole issues about during the football season, about all the brawling going on and, back earlier was football season where I said, this is still amateur sports. Like, they're not pros. They might be getting paid like the pros because of NIL, but they're still kids, and kids will be kids. I mean, I work in high school baseball. I know all about, all the bickering and chirping going on in dugouts in high school baseball. I literally saw it a little bit today firsthand. One closing thought, folks, away from March Madness. And this broke, I believe, about 3 or 4 hours ago. But sad news in the world of sports, though, James, another one of the great figures of all time. The big man himself, James, George Foreman, legendary boxer, passed away earlier this evening at the age of 76 years old, per a report by the Houston Chronicle. James, I know that everyone will remember George for naming his kids George, George 1, George 2, George 3, George 4, but also I think, James, a trailblazing figure in professional sports. So, on the Olympic stage with Team USA, his many comeback tours, him and Joe and the rivalry between him and Joe Frazier. I always think of Howard Cosell. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier. And the world champ of the world is calm as can be ever in a neutral corner. And I think just, though, James, a larger-than-life persona. George made his name, though, as a HBO commentator with Jim Lapley and Larry Merchant for God knows how long, calling all those heavyweight fights and all the great fights back in the 80s and 90s. And, of course, the George Foreman grill. My family has owned one for, again, who knows how long. I think everyone in some way has owned a George Foreman grill. So, James, how you remember George Foreman in wake of his passing earlier on Friday night?
I I was thinking to myself, man, I'm happy I know some type of sports, because if not, I only know him for the grill that I have in the kitchen that I rarely use, that I got on clearance at a Big Lots before it closed. And then he was on an episode of King of the Hill with his daughter being a fighter.
Frida Foreman, who was a professional boxer as well.
Yeah, and that's the only reason I knew like who that was. But then I don't know how many George Juniors there were, or George the Third.
I think there's 8.
Damn. Anyway, got it in. When he made his, I don't know how many comeback tours he did, but there's 2 examples of it on YouTube. Ted Leitner, of course, of CBS 8, he's doing his nightly sports broadcaster report, and he ends with George Foreman's comeback tour.
That was like in '88, I think, when he was on his comeback tour,
and he was fighting some guy from like Hawaii, and Ted kind of rhymed his name.
The great Tony Fluwangi.
Yeah, that scene I'll go back to sometimes. Yeah, that part. And then he left with the hockey fight of the night. And then when George had a comeback later on in the 90s, Jim Lampley was there. And the one thing I can remember with Jim Lampley saying is when George Foreman, it felt like the other fighter took a dive, right? It felt like George didn't beat him up that much or that hard. But all I could hear Jim Lampley saying or yelling, "It happened! It happened! It happened! George Foreman wins, on the revenge tour," or something like that. But those are 2 examples I remember George Foreman. I don't know much else about him other from, the Howard Cosell moment there.
Down goes Frazier.
I believe he fought Ali, and Ali
Rumble in the Jungle.
Lost, I want to say.
Yeah, but it was the Rumble in the Jungle, and that was like a big thing back then.
Down in Africa?
Yeah, I believe so.
When I had the fight game,
I think he had the fighter in Africa. Then I think they had the Rumble, they had the Rumble in the Jungle in Africa. Then I think they had the Thrilla in Manila in the Philippines, I think, too.
What happened?
I love boxing in their catchy branding for the big fights.
Now we have celebrities or YouTubers.
Yeah, I think I remember George Foreman for like you said, James, the grill, the King of the Hill episode with, Frida going out there and beating the tar out of Hank Hill's daughter at one point in time. But I also, James, think though that George became a minister after he retired too at one point down in Houston. But I also think I remember him though, like you were saying though about his commentary. I have watched the 2 fights involving Riddick Bowe and Andrew Galata, who were they were notorious fights though for Galata pounding Bowe's brains in, but he kept throwing low blows and he got DQ'd in both fights. In the first fight, it was a massive melee that broke out and a brawl broke out. And I remember at the end of the second fight when he got DQ'd again, and George just lit into Larry Merchant about intentional, because I think that Larry was kind of saying, George, he was not hitting him low, it wasn't intentional. And George just went off on Larry Merchant at that time. I wouldn't want to piss off George Foreman, for God's sakes. What if he has a flashback and he pops you right in the grill, literally and figuratively? James, I think you wanted to add on more about George Foreman?
That moment, the first fight, that the big brawl happened, I remember a lot of people were coming in, just random, not fans, but I guess Foreman's Corner or whatever. And, there were maybe fans trying to come in, and George Foreman's like, "Don't go in there, son. Don't do that." And
George was back there holding people on the apron, where, on the apron in the ring, and pulling people down and throwing them down on the ground like they were rag dolls. Good on him.
And then Lampley was saying, "What are you going to accomplish in there? Don't do that." But yeah, George
Foreman's got you around the neck, for God's sakes.
Bigger than life. I can only imagine. Might go back because in mid 90s had some crazy things happen. Maybe Foreman was there when that man had that parachute come into the ring.
And that was at Caesar's Palace, I think.
Outside, in Vegas.
And I think he was on the call when Tyson bit Holyfield.
Jeez, he saw a lot, and he's been through a lot. Wow.
By the way, for those who were keeping tabs, George and his wife had 12 kids, 5 sons and 7 daughters. George Jr., George the Third, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th. And he explained, I named all my sons George Edward Foreman, so they would always have something in common. I say to them, if one of us goes up, then we all go up together. And if one goes down, we all go down together. Open and close quote.
That's awesome. I want to see how many Georges it takes to hold the coffin going in and out of the church. Sorry, let's get out of here.
Oh, my God. Well, we have a couple of comments real quick that rolled in. Casey says, by the way, North Carolina, James, this goes back, though, to what we said, though, on Wednesday and even last night and even tonight. UNC definitely should not have been in the tournament. Ole Miss was a better team. He also believes that Boise State should have gotten in, and they got screwed. San Diego State should not have been in there either. James, your thoughts?
Man, that's tough. But I think San Diego State got help from Texas losing. Oh, no, not Texas. There were a couple of other teams that were on the bubble that lost.
Ohio State, Indiana.
Yeah, those were the two that I was thinking of.
West Virginia.
Yeah, because those teams lost.
Sadly, that's the team, James, that got screwed the most was West Virginia.
The most. Yeah,
they were a virtual lock, yet someone cut the lock off.
They had the quad wins that were necessary enough to get in.
To your point, all the metrics said this, but committee chairman's in charge of UNC. We're going to put him in.
And then Boise State wasn't as strong as the last couple of years. Usually they would sweep San Diego State, but they didn't this year.
No,
so I think that's why they didn't get in
this year. I think they pounded them.
They got blown out.
Yeah, and they blew them out in Boise, but it was not the same in San Diego.
Right.
And James, Casey also offers this one about UNC. As for Herbert Davis, he got extended, but if he does not do a better job next year, would not be surprised if he is shown the door and they move on from him, as you said, the internal hire.
Man, I was just hearing the rumblings today.
But if that happens, though, if they do fire him, who's the big name coming in?
Tyler Hansborough. They always go from within.
Christian Leitner goes and coaches at his arch rival. I don't know. I have no idea.
Sean May is on the staff. So
that'd be a good hire, I think, if that happens.
You could just tell who that is being on the bench. You could just tell when I'm watching these games or these North Carolina games, like, oh my God, that's Sean May, the former Bobcat.
Coach in waiting.
Maybe. But I don't think they would go outside of the program, though.
Yeah, it's tough to gauge, though, when it's a program like UNC, blue blood program, rich in tradition. It was funny, though. I think today, Adam Klefko, my go-to girl, Candace Parker, Coach Wright, and someone else, they actually brought the UNC Ram into the studio, and I think it crapped all over the set floor, too. Going to commercial break.
Seth Davis was probably there. He's the one yesterday that had that Triton, fake Triton thing on Thursday.
By the way, I thoroughly enjoyed Brett Nessler showing the picture of him taking his daughter trick-or-treating. He was King Neptune with the Triton, and his daughter was Ariel, the Little Mermaid.
And then Nessler was very buff, and Hayward was saying, wow, you were buff back then. But that's the only thing. When you bring live animals on the set, you can't control what comes out of them, literally.
So what's more hysterical, Uga the Bulldog wanting to fight Bebo, the longhorn steer? Or is it the Ram of UNC taking a dump in the TNT studios today on Friday?
I gotta see this one. Hopefully I can see it on X, but I'll always remember that at the Sugar Bowl, I think it was, with Uga and
wanting to play chase with Bebo, the Longhorn steer.
That's oh God, I can remember another thing real quick.
Go for it.
What was it? An Auburn Tiger scored. I think Uga, or it was probably Uga.
Yeah, it was Uga.
I think animals. They had, again, that Texas mascot. What's his name? Buggy. Bebo. They had him. I think when they were playing at Jerry's World, they had him in the back in a tunnel, and I was listening to the McAfee cast, and they were saying it smelled like crap in that area.
I wonder why.
So that's weird that you mentioned that now.
I remember Texas came to the Holiday Bowl one year, and Bebo was stationed on the field behind the cannon in the end zone at Qualcomm. I'm like, I'm shocked he's not somewhere else. That thing goes off, man. I mean, I'd be running for my life around that damn thing.
Might see some, Tijuana bull ring action, but in America, 20 miles north. I love that.
Diego Torrero from the University of San Diego.
That's always tough when you got animals on the live set, though. Those bloopers with the reporters.
I honestly get concerned because I think it happened when they when Ralphie did his run at Colorado this year, that one of the handlers, I think, got knocked down during the Ralphie run during pregame.
That also reminds me, a long time ago, Oklahoma had their whole
the
carriage fall down. Yeah, that always reminds me of that. Always
caution flag.
Ugh.
I know. I get scared when I see not live mascots, but like if there's a handler like Ralphie, Bebo, Tommy Trojan and Traveler, Warpaint for Florida State. Like I get a little concerned, especially if they're carrying weapons like a sword or a flaming spear. Like, please be careful.
That's just, luckily they play on hardwood.
You have to worry about them running out during a football game, which is
no animals at the arena.
No animals were harmed in the making of the pregame intro. It's why I'd rather prefer them to be like the Kansas Jayhawk, be in a costume on an actual thing.
I got to watch that on Twitter or on X.
You got it saved somewhere, I'm sure, right?
I'll find it now.
So with that in mind, folks, 2 great days of college basketball. Quick program note, folks, James and I will not be on air tomorrow. I'm going to be at a professional women's soccer match tomorrow on Saturday. We will try and come back on Sunday by popular demand again on Sunday. James, what do you think?
I forgot to mention, on deck will be tomorrow with Chris Mabry.
There you go.
Brandon hopefully will come up soon. We'll probably do the divisional picks, playoff picks, award winners, and let's see what else comes out of spring training news, whatever injuries come up. So totally forgot to mention that, but yeah, watch on deck tomorrow night, maybe around 7 or 8ish. I think we're gonna do the show live here on Coast.
And then on Sunday, folks, James and I will be back for our 3rd night of Madness Tonight, right back here on Coast to Coast Entertainment. Big shout out and thank you again to our viewers who joined in, Casey King and the Sarge and Christy Wilson. Again, always love great interaction, James. And I'm glad that we kind of I got this idea very late on Thursday, wanting to fill a bit of a void in my schedule. Like, let's talk March Madness. We got the show done, and now here we're just kind of hanging out and still chatting with some viewers. But more importantly, though, I think great to be able to catch everybody up on March Madness.
Yeah, I don't know as much, and I should. And now I'm learning so much the last 2 days, or last 3 days, really, or maybe in the conference tournaments. But yeah, I'm learning more about these players that I haven't watched all year long, and I'm pretty sure. There was a moment in the coverage where Charles Barkley mentioned, well, I'm only watching one game. It was a Michigan State game because Bryant was making it close, but they were wanting to get his thoughts on the Xavier game, but he didn't watch any of it. And he mentioned, you know what? Pass it to Clark and Kenny, that question, because I'm watching this game. And
oh my goodness. I gotta say, man, I live for Turner's coverage of March Madness, man. And I love the crews. I know that James has his vendetta with Spiro Deeds.
Okay, I actually got through. I got through today, and I'm like, okay, it's not so bad. Not so bad.
Oh, I mean, James was like, I told James that Spiro was calling the first 4. He was so pissed when I told
Luckily,
him.
I wasn't home for those. I was at work.
Home for
Thank God.
For Spiro, but Brian Anderson, Kevin Harlan, Stan Van Gundy. Again, I enjoy seeing again my go-to girl Candace Parker on set with Adam Lefko and Coach Jay Wright. I love though James too. Whenever Candace is on, man, I love that her and Jay Wright, they've got some great chemistry, and I love that all the sets though do have great chemistry. Again, Ernie working with Chuck and Kenny and stuff like that. But for some reason, James, Candace Parker and Jay Wright, man, they mesh so damn good, and I love that particular broadcast team. And even Candace James, covering the men's tournament though, but even her playing days though, Pat Summit, Tennessee, and how that has helped her though into leading coverage though for March Madness on Turner.
Yeah, I just realized this today, and it's more of the NBA talk with the players not liking what, the inside guys say about them, or they're not paying attention enough to the new game. And it just felt that way. And I could see how the set you're talking about with Lefko, Parker, Davis, and Wright, where they actually watch the college game. Like Kenny and Charles, they don't, Ernie, they don't watch the college game like the other set does. So if you really want the right opinions, you go on the other set. If you want the funny and popular opinions, you go with the, Clark Kellogg set. But Clark knows his stuff, but it seems like the other two just comes in for the entertainment. And it hurts me to say that. I love those guys, but it just hurts me to say that. Lefko is always very, dressed well along with Candace. They always have something flamboyant on, I've noticed.
Yeah, Candace changes her hair. She went with the long ponytail. She went with, the bun on top of her head today. So who knows what the look will be on Saturday. But I honestly, James, and I'm not being biased because I got to interview Candace when I was in college and I saw her play, collegiately and then, in the pros and her 3 rings. But I just feel like, though, I learned more about basketball when I listen to her. And I think, James, like I usually say, though, again, the player perspective coming to the television set. And, I really don't. And if she's on the halftime, James, or even pregame, or if it's one of her games, I really sit and absorb what she's talking about, because it really, in a way, whenever I get a chance to work on ESPN Plus again, or, whenever I call college games in general, that kind of in a way helps. And I can pick up what she's kind of looking at, though. But again, I think all the crews have been great, and they usually are, though, the whole entire time. And like you're saying, though, about Lisa Byington working with her crew in Seattle, Tom McCarthy with his crew, your boy Spiro Deeds, Brian Anderson, and of course Kevin Harlan. And also, James, real quick before we do get out of here, though, I wrote this on Tuesday when the first 4 began. I really want to applaud and salute and say thanks to CBS and Turner for how they have really dedicated their coverage to Greg Gumbel. They all have the gold Mike lapel pins, and how they have the very touching open to the broadcast of Selection Sunday with, all of Greg's intros to Selection Sunday and Ernie Johnson's monologue, though, and I could tell he was getting worked up, though. It sucks, and I'm very appreciative, though, that CBS and Turner, TNT, and True, they're really keeping Greg Gumbel's spirit alive, though, throughout the course of his tournament, and I think major praise goes their way.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it maybe a little bit that this would be the first one without Greg, and it was weird on Selection Sunday. I know Zucker is really good, but it was weird not hearing, the number 1 seed is Duke, and they will be taking on the winner between, the first 4. It was weird not hearing Greg Gumbel's voice on that last Sunday. Again, it's like all my voices are leaving and either retiring or passing away. And that's just another one.
Jim Nantz.
Yeah, and then Jim Nantz not, is it going to be an Eagle this year doing the national
it's Iron Eagle again for the 2nd year in a row.
Okay, a lot of pressure on him, but it's just weird. But changes always happen. I'm wondering how next year is going to be, since the inside guys are going to be on another network. Or maybe they'll have a way that they can continue to do March Madness.
They're bringing Shaq on board next year. Let's go.
He doesn't even watch the college game, though. That's what
we got 4 rings, Chuck.
Okay, I love the guys, but it's like it's a topic that I had for CTC at night. Remember, the random topic was like, are you going to get people in there that actually watch the college game, or do you just want faces and names and personalities? And that's one thing that the coverage will have to struggle with going forward. But yeah, Greg will always be missed. It was appropriate that they played Start Me Up when they were going to the show Sunday. that was appropriate. And then every time I hear it, I think of Greg and his love for the Rolling Stones, all the way from when I seen video with him and Chris Berman at ESPN singing Stone songs. So it was awesome.
So again, major props to Turner Sports for really helping keep Greg Gumbel's spirit. Again, all the broadcasters are wearing a gold microphone lapel pin on their suit coats or on their dress tops. And again, salute to them for doing so. Again, folks, we're out of here for the night. Again, you can catch James tomorrow on Deck with Chris Mabry and maybe Big B, Brandon Herrera. I'll be away for tomorrow night to enjoy a night out for some footy at Snapdragon Stadium for the San Diego Wave FC home opener versus the Utah Royals. But we will be back, though, for our third night of coverage of Madness Tonight with men's and women's March Madness talk right back here on Sunday. Waiting on my start time, though, depending on when the last game will start for men's hoops on Sunday evening. We'll come here probably about 9:40, 10 o'clock in the evening again to give more thoughts and keep you folks posted here on all things March Madness. Also, again, folks, one small reminder, we're not quite there yet. But look out, though, folks, for a C2C watch-along, much like we've done for wrestling pay-per-views and when James and Chris did the SEC title game. Look for James and myself to hopefully be hosting a watch-along for the men's title game on April 7th. We'll have more about that, though, as we get closer, though, to the title game, though, in a couple of weeks. But with that in mind, though, folks, for James Gonzales, Callan McClurg saying goodnight here from Southern California. We'll see you folks back here, as mentioned, for Madness Tonight again on Sunday, back here following the last game concluding on Sunday evening, folks. Until next time, have a great night. Till then, bye-bye.